All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Big Douglas Show. It is great to be back after a week off for medical reasons. It's nice to be back, and the game is important. And to discuss that with me today, host of the Al Galdi podcast, Al Galdi. Al, how are you?
Doing well, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I always enjoy when we have a little time to do this. Now, are you a big Christmas guy, Al? Do you guys have like decorations everywhere? Will you be doing all the events and stuff? How does that work for you?
Well, I wouldn't say that I'm like a massive Christmas guy, but my wife is a massive Christmas girl, and my 5-year-old son and 2-year-old daughter are massive Christmas people. So I kind of get coerced into all of it. I mean, I'm not anti-Christmas. It's just like, I don't know. I don't need like all the pomp and circumstance, but they enjoy it. And so, you know how it goes, man. I don't have much of a choice. I don't have much of a vote, you know.
That's
I'm,
right.
this is not a coach centric approach in my house. Okay, trust me on that one. So yeah, so
Now, are you I didn't realize this is a thing, but are you a one tree family or a multi tree family? I see lots of people that have several Christmas trees. Seems like a lot of work.
no one that that I would not allow more than one. More than one's kind of ridiculous to me. But you know what? I guess if you enjoy it, why not? But no, we have one, and it better stay that way. Although, like I said, I don't have much of a say. So next year it may be three for all I know. Who knows?
Speaking of Christmas wishes granted, do you believe that Dan Snyder will sell the team and give the people what they want?
I do. I think it is happening, and it's amazing. And it's almost like one of these things that you constantly feel like you have to double check because I mean, look, it's like a dream come true for most, if not all of us. And so it's like, wow, this really is happening. But I do think that it is. And I have found it very encouraging. The statement that the Commanders put out saying that Dan and Tanya were looking into selling the thing came out on November 2nd. And pretty much everything that has come out since then in terms of the reporting has been along the lines of yes, they are selling, and yes, they are selling the entire team. Now, there have been a few things saying, well, nothing's for sure. And I know Albert Breer of SI.com had the thing of, well, there is that possibility that Dan does nothing. But in terms of like actual reporting, like what's happening, the indications are that he's selling and selling the entire thing. I feel like if he wasn't doing that, we would have had a lot more over the last, month and a half suggesting, not so fast on this thing. But it seems like it is happening. And, there's so much irony in all of this. But one of the things is, it may be that he only wants to sell a minority share. But because he is who he is, and because of the way owning an NFL team is, nobody wants to be his minority partner.
Right.
Like you think about the people involved in buying the team.
My only concern, of course, is that Dan will turn heel on us and not be interested when push comes to shove to actually get rid of the football team. That I guess that's my biggest concern there,
Yeah,
because
I mean,
he doesn't mind playing heel. Al,
no, he doesn't. He's maybe the single greatest heel in the history of Washington D.C. area sports, but I don't know that he has much of a choice. I mean, the Washington Post reported weeks ago that Dan needs to repay this loan that he took out to buy out the disgruntled minority partners by 2028. And Dan doesn't have that money. It's a funny thing with Dan. He's rich, but he's not liquid. And
yeah,
actually, if you look at like Forbes rankings of billionaires, he's not high up there. Like he's only worth, and I put only in quotation marks, but it's like 2 point something billion. Like you have a lot of other people now who are worth a lot more than that. So he's not liquid enough. He doesn't have enough cash to pay back the loan without selling the team. If all of that in fact lines up, then it may be that he has no choice but to sell the team.
do you think they'll get to a point where the owners say enough is enough? You're going to do this, or maybe it's already happened. Maybe they've said, "Hey, listen, we got the votes. Don't do this. Let's just take your $8 billion and ride off into the sunset."
Well, I think they want him to sell, but I think they see how this is playing out. And so they're not going to rock the boat. I thought what happened this week at the league meeting in Irving, Texas was telling that this really wasn't that much of a topic. The only reason there were any ownership stuff that came up this week was questions that were asked. It wasn't like there were meetings held about the Commander situation or anything like that. And I think the philosophy of the league is he's selling. So let's go ahead and let this happen. Let's not rock the boat. Let's not tick him off anymore. I thought it was interesting. Jim Irsay's comments were a lot more reserved this time as compared to what he said in October, because I think there's a feeling of he's doing it. So we don't have to force it. We don't have to do anything. I think it's pretty clear they want him out. Probably to varying degrees. Like, I don't know necessarily that every owner hates his guts or anything like that, but there's been too much about other owners wanting him out to believe that, like, nobody wants him out. Like, no, I think they want him out. I think Goodell wants him out to whatever extent Goodell's say so matters, but I think they're getting what they want. That's what's kind of funny about all of this. We're getting what we want, and this kind of came out of nowhere. It's amazing when you take a step back and look at like where we were just a few months ago.
When that tweet, whatever, dropped about Bank of America, I'm sure we all had the same like jaw drop moment, right? There are not many of those jaw drop moments in life. Say that fast. One for me was overtime, national championship. Alabama shoots Georgia down the sideline to end it immediately. Jaw hit the floor. When I saw that Bank of America was working with them, I mean, jaw hit the floor because I never in a million years thought it would happen.
No, and you had to like double and triple check it, and you had to sort of let it process in your mind, because there had been things this year that had come up, like Mike Florio around the Super Bowl. I think it actually was Super Bowl Sunday, reported like the tide was turning on Dan Snyder. And we've had all the congressional things that have come out and the various reports that have come up, and a lot of them initially are met with, oh my God, this is the thing. And then time kind of passes and you say, all right, that wasn't maybe insignificant, but it's, that wasn't like the game changer that we're all hoping for. When that statement came out on November 2nd, that really was a game changer. And what's also interesting about that is that statement came out in response to a report earlier that morning from Forbes. We know how it's been with Dan. He has not been shy about shooting down reports. He has not been shy about putting out statements saying this isn't true and, don't believe this. And here's, where we're coming from. The statement validated the report.
That's right.
And so that makes you feel like it's true. And it is true. They are exploring selling the team. Nothing's done until it's done. I think we do have to keep saying that. But every indication, or at least most indications, are that this is happening. So, yeah, Merry Christmas.
What I guess the follow-up to that, right, is what does that mean for the front office, for the coaching staff, for the draft? I mean, it puts everything kind of in flux, or maybe it doesn't put anything in flux at all. Maybe it's more stabilitating than anything.
Well, it's a weird deal, because on the one hand, yeah, you get new ownership and I think everything's on the table. And when this broke in early November, you felt like, all right, Armageddon is coming. Whoever buys this team is going to hit the nuke button and blow the whole thing up and start over. Well, since then, the team has played well.
Okay.
So I don't know that the right thing is to blow it all up. Like, I think you look at things right now and I kind of want to see some more of this movie and kind of see where it ends up taking us. The other thing is, we don't have a definitive timeline on the sale. The closest thing that we've gotten to a timeline was what Jay Glazer reported on Fox NFL Sunday a few weeks back, saying that the hope was to have this sale completed by the league meeting in March. So if that's what ends up happening, obviously by March, I mean, the NFL coaching cycle is done, right? The coaching cycle takes place January, February, and March is when free agency and the trading period get going. So you're not going to blow everything up as you're entering the meat of the offseason.
Okay.
So I think that, in conjunction with the team doing better, makes me feel like it's almost a certainty that Ron Rivera and the coaching staff and the front office are back for at least next season. I mean, I suppose you could have some change from a standpoint of like, a Chris Harris getting a defensive coordinator job or something like that. But like, I don't think you're going to see football operations blown up. Maybe business ops undergoes some major change once new ownership comes in. But I think right now, if you're Ron Rivera, you feel pretty good about your job security. And keep in mind, too, he still has 2 years left on his contract beyond this season. So he has contractual certainty. We know Scott Turner does. He got extended this past offseason. We don't know about Jack Del Rio, but the belief has been that he has a pretty healthy contract. So, yeah, I think we're probably going to see the band back together for at least another season and, maybe longer.
Yeah, AJ Perez from Front Office Sports was on the show, and that's what he said was like the end of March, beginning of April for
Yeah.
sale of the team. So, yeah, you couldn't. I mean, you just couldn't start over again at that time of the year. You mentioned earlier, Al, about how good things have been looking recently as far as winning goes. Well, they only look good because they look bad to begin with. That is
Yeah.
a thing for Ron Rivera. You and I have talked about this before. Since the last time we talked about it, have you come up for a reason as to why they're slow starters on the run, and that not just here. I mean, all the way back to Carolina, right?
Yeah, I don't think there is a great reason. I mean, I think one thing I've thought about is, and we have seen this here a bit, Ron can be slow to change things that a lot of people feel like need to be changed. And I think some of that is Ron believes in you got to give something a chance before you abandon it, which I actually agree with. I respect him for abiding by that philosophy. But if you begin a season and something ain't working and you kind of stick with it to see if it ends up working and it doesn't work, well, then that's going to put you behind the eight ball. I think back to something like, if you remember.
I've said this often. It takes him a long time to get to where most of us thought he should have been. I mean, you look at Benjamin Saint. We lost you there for just a second, Al, but I don't know where you were heading with that, but Benjamin St. Juice getting moved to the outside, right? I mean, sometimes he is forced into these decisions. It felt, I think, to a lot of us like it was the right decision all along.
Yeah, like if you remember when Troy Apke was a starting free safety in 2020 and it wasn't working, and Ron gave it a chance to work, but it ended up not working, and Ron ended up abandoning that, and that was the right call. You think about last year, everyone was like, Landon Collins needs to play, in the box.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't doing as much of that early in the season. And then eventually that changed and that, lended itself toward the team playing better. So things like that. But even still, that still doesn't like totally explain. I mean, it's a massive discrepancy between his record as an NFL head coach September and October versus his
Mm-hmm.
record as an NFL head coach November, December, and January, talking about the regular season. And it is bizarre. And it's the kind of thing that you say to yourself, well, you can't count on that year to year. And yet, at this point, the sample size for Ron as an NFL head coach is large enough to where I don't know. I feel like you kind of can. You kind of can
Absolutely.
count on it. It seems to happen every year. It's happened every year that he's been Washington's head coach. That's for sure.
No, there's no doubt about it. And I guess to the point you made, and it's the only thing I can come up with is what they're trying to enforce is a do it. We like the way we do it, and we think the way we do it will work. And if you'll do it the way we want you to do it, it'll work. But it must be difficult because it obviously takes these guys a while to get up to speed. And that's the only thing I can think of is that he is unwilling, that they are unwilling to flex the system at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it too, and this is more of a Washington thing. I don't know how much this would explain the Carolina slow starts, better finishes, but you know, the team hasn't been really good at any point so far in his tenure here. It's been okay. We hope that it's getting better. I think that it is getting better. But when you're sort of floating on the margins, as this team is, especially on offense, you're going to be prone to, hey, if some things aren't going well, it can get ugly early. You can get off to a 1-4 start because just, you need every little thing to go right and every little thing isn't going right. So I think that may be part of it too. But yeah, it's a strange thing. It's not something that you want to see continue because if you do want to be a really good NFL team, you can't get off to 1-4 starts. You can't be in dire predicaments come mid-October. I mean, it's not the way that good teams operate. Like you need to be able to get off to a healthy, functional start. Just get off to like a mediocre start. Like you don't have to
Yeah.
be 5-1, but just don't be 1-5. Like
Yeah.
that kind of a thing. So yeah, it's a strange thing. I think it's going to be actually a big topic this offseason, but I don't think that we're going to get an answer on it, to be honest with you. And again, I think a lot of it probably is, especially with the offense, just the offense isn't that good. you need a lot of things to go well for you to do well. And so if you don't get a lot of things going well, then you can be prone to starting off poorly.
And yet there's still an opportunity to get to 10 wins for the first time in forever, which feels crazy to me, but yet here we are. The way they've been winning is simple. It's a formula as old as the game itself. They're doing it with defense and running the ball and controlling the clock. It's what we watched San Francisco do last night. But San Francisco is one of the few teams that actually does it and does it well. Is it sustainable to win that way? Defense first.
Well, I think it can work for a season. I don't think it's sustainable if you want to have like meaningful, lasting success. So, I know as a fan of the team, there's been this kind of push pull for me, and I'm guessing for a lot of people listening, of there's the short term and there's the long term. There's the immediate picture and there's the bigger picture. When it comes to the latter, when it comes to the bigger picture, there are a lot of conversations that need to be had. Okay. But those conversations can wait till the offseason. Things like the quarterback, things like the state of the offense, things like this style of play, things like, why is it that Ron and his personnel staff seem to be really good on things like day 2, day 3 draft picks and second and third tier free agent signings and waiver wire claims. But when it comes to the big moves, the team has had a harder time with those things, so it's like all of that is important, but all of that is bigger picture stuff that can wait. Specific to the now, you're in a playoff push. The offensive style that the team has, I don't think is going to change. I think the team feels like it has to play this way. I think it's actually comical because we spent all offseason trying to say, hey, the team doesn't have to play this way anymore because the team got itself a quarterback in Carson Wentz, and we're going to see more explosive plays. And yet here we are in the middle of December, and the team is right back to playing as it was playing last season offensively and in 2020. And there is a screaming lack of explosive plays. And it's like, this is a third consecutive season with Ron and Scott Turner in which the offense just kind of is this way. So come the offseason, you really can attack, okay, why does this keep being the case? How do we fix it? And, I think we all know that a lot of this has to do with quarterback. But for right now, can you win like this? Yes, you can. You have been winning like this. And I think the defense is good enough to where this kind of winning can continue. I think it's funny. We thought that last season, the team would be a team with a really good defense, a solid running game, and a quarterback who wasn't great, but could be good enough and, has this like baller mentality, has these very likable attributes, talking about Ryan Fitzpatrick. Well, that team never really developed last season, in part because of what happened to Fitzpatrick, in larger part because the defense just wasn't anywhere near what we thought it could be. This season's team is that team. It's funny, like the 2022 Commanders to me are what the 2021 Washington football team was supposed to be. And like I said, for a season, that can be good enough. Maybe even for 2 seasons, that can be good enough. But yeah, bigger picture, you're not beating Patrick Mahomes, you're not beating Josh Allen, etc., by playing this way. It is an antiquated way. It's a way that requires a lot of things to go well, and it's hard for all of those things to continue to go well. But for the now, this is where we're at. This is what we do, and let's hope that the success continues.
And the irony, Al, is that it also felt like before the season started this year that we thought it would be the other way around, right? You brought in Carson Wentz to really get it down the field. You loaded him with weapons, thought the offensive line would be, a healthy, good spot. It turned out it hasn't been as much. And I think people thought the defense may be a little bit behind just because of what we saw last year. And to your point, it has not been that way. The defense was not actually good the first couple of games, but have really been playoff caliber, dare I say, Super Bowl caliber, at least the last couple of weeks. So it has been kind of odd the way that's flipped around because they're loaded with weapons on offense.
They are. And I mean, it really is a reminder of how you think you know and you don't know. We are all dummies in the end. And that includes the people running the team. And I don't say that in an insulting way. It's the nature of the NFL. You think you know, and it turns out that you don't know. And yeah, like we thought the offensive line would be a strength. It's been a weakness. We thought the defense might be a problem. It's been a big strength. We thought that Carson Wentz would be the QB1 for most, if not all of the season. Taylor Heineke the guy, remember, who everyone agreed should not be the QB1 for this season. That's the guy who has ended up being the QB1 for the majority of the season. And that's the guy who now a lot of the same people who swore shouldn't be the QB1 are saying, no, you have to stick with him because he's the best option at quarterback. Like, think about all of the ironies to this season and all of the things that weren't supposed to be the case and yet have ended up being the case. I mean, think about Jack Del Rio. How many people wanted this guy fired not that long ago?
That's right.
And he's done a really good job with this defense. And his assistants get a lot of credit too. But, like, I think Jack deserves credit. He's doing a very nice job with this defense. So we think we know, and it turns out we do not know.
And it's crazy. I know you believe as I do, and I think it's the right way to look at things, but, win losses are so tough on quarterbacks to be assigned. However, the kid has lost 2 football games in 2 years and tied one.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been incredible. We talked about the weapons. Do you prefer this group of weapons or the Djax, Garcon, Crowder, Reed stack?
I think I'd say 2016, just because that offense got to a level that really no Washington offense has gotten to, save for the 2012 team over the last, I'd say, 20 or so years. I mean, the 1999 offense was good with Brad Johnson and Michael Westbrook and Albert Connell and Stephen Davis. But, like, it's a short list in terms of, like, the truly great offenses that Washington has had in the Dan Snyder era. You're talking about the 99 Redskins. You're talking about the 2012 Redskins, and you're talking about the 2016 Redskins. That was a lethal passing attack. And you obviously can't say that about this season's team. Now, the quarterback play in 2016 was a lot better than the quarterback play than the team has now. But, I mean, I think about that 2016 team. Pierre, Deshaun, year 2 of Jamison Crowder, who was very good. You were really deep at tight end. That was the last good season that Jordan Reed had. Vernon Davis was very good that season. I think that would be the biggest difference. And you also were sneaky effective running the ball with Fat Rob Kelly.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest difference would be you got real tight end production in 2016. You have not gotten very good tight end production in 2022. But yeah, if you're talking about just the receivers, Pierre, Deshaun Jameson, Terry, Curtis, Jahan, that's a tough call, man. That is not an easy call. And I think for sure the top 3 that Washington has at receiver right now is the best since at least the 2016 team. And if you told me that the top 3 right now is better than the top 3 on the 2016 team, I don't think that that's ridiculous. I really don't. Terry, Curtis, and Jahan are really good. And they have been clutch, and they have generated yardage after contact. And I've been so impressed with all 3 of those guys this season.
I promise we'll get to the game on Sunday, but I want to throw a couple names out there. These are guys whose contracts will end this year. Payne, and we'll just go through them quickly. Payne, are you on the bring Payne back train? I know you were not, as I recall, last time we talked. A lot of things have changed since then.
Yeah, I want him back. I think the team was foolish in not talking extension with him last offseason. I mean, to me, last offseason, it was one extreme or the other, either extend him or trade him. The team did neither, and now is in a very odd position where
he's always.
Yeah, I know. He's having a great season. You want him back. Here's one thing, though, I would say that I do find encouraging. Because the market for interior defensive linemen is expected to spike, it actually may be prudent to use the franchise tag, because there's a belief that the AAV for a Daron Payne big money long-term contract this offseason would be like $21 million.
That's right.
If the franchise tag ends up being around $18 million, that's actually a good deal. And that actually can be that the tag works as it is supposed to work, but never works for this team. And that is as a placeholder to further negotiate a long-term deal. Because when the tag is sky high, there's no impetus for the player to work on a long-term deal, as was the case with Kirk, as was the case with Brandon Scherf. But if Daron knows that he can get a $21 million AAV and you tag him at 18, that might compel him to continue to talk contract this offseason. So if I had to guess, I think a tag is coming. But I think that may well lead to further contract discussions and like real long-term discussions beyond that tag deadline. But yeah, I do want Duran back. And here's the thing with Duran, it's not just that he's been great this season. Duran Payne has been very durable in his career.
I was going to say, has he missed a game? I don't know.
He doesn't miss time. And the other thing is he's very young. He was drafted when he was 20. Yep. And this doesn't always get talked about how old guys are when they get drafted. Some guys get drafted old. Brandon Sheriff was one of those guys. There was another reason I wasn't huge on bringing him back, because older guy prone to injury. Duran's the opposite. Younger guy, like immune to injury, it feels like, knock on wood. So you always worry about when you pay big money to a player, can I count on this guy to stay healthy? And as he ages, is he going to continue to be good? Duran Payne is in his mid-20s, and he doesn't miss time. Those are like two flashing neon signs of pay me, because it feels like to whatever extent you can count on the guy, you can count on Duran Payne to stay healthy. He's still relatively young, and as we've seen this season, he's blossomed.
Schweitzer, who looks like he'll play centerman, they've had the worst luck at center ever. I mean, for like 2 years now. And again, talk about hard things to explain. But Schweitzer back at center this week. His contract's up. Interested in bringing him back.
I would. I mean, he to me is a depth guy. I think there's a lot that's going to happen with the offensive line this offseason. I actually think with the offseason and just in terms of football stuff, quarterback is 1, Duran Payne is 2. I think offensive line is 3, at least as things stand right now. I think a total rebuild of this offensive line, certainly of the interior of the offensive line, may be coming. The line has been a weakness this season, has been better lately, but it has not been anywhere close to what it was the last 2 seasons, especially last season. So I think a lot of change could be coming. But yeah, as a depth guy, I got no problem with Wes Schweitzer. The fact that he can play both center and guard is valuable. So a guy like that, for sure, I'd be open to bringing him back, and he shouldn't cost that much.
Heineke's up. And I've said this a couple times now in the last couple of weeks. I think there's a better chance that he's the day one starter next year than he's not. I just don't know where the other options are. I mean, you're not going to be high enough to draft a guy. I mean, I guess you can let him and Sam Howell fight it out for who's next. I suppose they could bring Carson Wentz back. I don't know how you can convince yourself to do that at the number. So assuming that Heineke's, say, in the, I don't know, $10 million range, where do you stand on bringing Heinicke back, assuming it's around that number?
Yeah, I'd bring him back. I think the team should be talking extension with him now. I said this a few weeks ago on my podcast. You want to get ahead on stuff like this. He should not cost a ton to bring back. Like you said, maybe $10 million. Maybe you can do a deal for less than that. Who knows? Yeah. There's an argument to be made for Taylor Heinicke is more valuable to Washington than he is to any other team. And Taylor Heinicke should be more sort of wanting to be back with Washington than maybe another free agent because of this Taylor Heinicke-Scott Turner marriage that we know has worked out well for Taylor. So I think there's impetus on the team side, but also on the player side to want to get a deal done here. So I would think talking in-season extension makes sense. I don't know if that's happened, but, it's worth noting in recent years, we have seen some late season contract extensions get done with this team. You think about Chase Roulier a few years ago. You think about Charles Leno Jr. As things stand right now, what I would advocate for is a 3-pronged quarterback mix for next season. Taylor Heinicke, Sam Howell, and someone who you draft, and you sort of figure it out from there. But, there always is the wild card of someone becomes available who you didn't foresee becoming available. The last 2 NFL off seasons have featured a lot of prominent veteran quarterbacks changing teams. Now, as we have seen from this past off season, that's not always a good thing because so many of these veterans have flopped, right? But, let's say a Derek Carr becomes available this offseason. I don't know. I would be open to that. I'm not saying I'd bend over backwards to bring him to Washington, but I'd be interested. I would want to talk to the Raiders about what trading for a Derek Carr might require. And, who else? Who knows who else might become available? So I think you have to keep an open mind on that. But, as things stand right now, I certainly want Taylor Heinicke back. And if nothing else, I think we all would agree he is a very good QB2. Like, he is, I think, a top 10, maybe even top 5 backup quarterback in the
definitely.
NFL.
Completely agree.
There is real value in that.
Damn right. A guy that was ascending and then got hurt. Cole Holcomb is up for a new contract. Assuming it's, I don't know, 9 million a year, something like that, is where, not the Roquan Smith level, obviously, but not backup money either. Where do you stand on Holcomb?
I like Cole. This is the second time in 3 seasons, though, that he's missed substantial time due to injury. So that's, something to keep in mind. Um, Look, we know that they don't play linebackers a lot. We know that they don't think about linebacker the way that a lot of fans do. I mean, that's another thing from the offseason. All of the talk about linebacker. They got to bring in another linebacker. When are they going to sign another linebacker? Well, they didn't think they needed to. And you know what? They've been correct. Okay. They've been correct on that. Like, they didn't need to bring in another linebacker. So, yeah, I mean, linebacker is like running back on offense. The money at the position is not what it used to be unless you're like outstanding. So I think a deal with Cole can get done. I think it's interesting with the season that Jamin Davis is having, and now all of this experience that Jamin is getting as the #1 linebacker. He's playing Jamin now is on basically every snap of every game.
Got the
Every
green
defensive
dot.
snap. Yeah, the green dot. I think it may be that he has surpassed Cole Holcomb as the team's #1 linebacker. We'll see. But you do need depth because, like, let's say Jamin gets hurt next year. Like, you do need someone else. Like, it's not going to be the David Mayo show. At least I don't think so. I think you can bring Cole back. If the team doesn't bring back Carson Wentz, it's going to open up a lot of money. That, in conjunction with the salary cap shooting up again, you're going to have money to play with here. So you can bring back Heineke and Holcomb and Schweitzer, and you can tag Deron Payne. Like, you're going to have money to do these things. The Carson thing, if in fact he's not brought back, that's going to open up a lot of cap space.
And talking about the defense, I mean, part of what's allowed them to not play linebackers, which is kind of the way the league is shifting anyway, is Derek Forrest, who has been fantastic. I mean, I know a lot of guys told me that did draft work after that draft that he was in, hey, watch out for Derek Forrest. He needs about a year to catch up with the speed of the NFL, and then he's going to be something really special. And obviously, it didn't look like that last year. He looks really good this year.
He's been awesome. You could argue what he has done this season has been the #1 most pleasant surprise.
Has allowed him to put McCain back into the slot where he belongs.
Yeah. And you think about, too, this team has had such a hard time getting quality safety play since Sean Taylor died 15 years ago. And for the first time since Sean died, you have two young stud safeties in Derek Forrest and Cameron Curl. And it feels so good as a fan to be able to say that. I mean, you have two just weapons at the safety position, the likes of which you have not had in a really long time. And, the other thing with Forrest is, and, again, this goes back to Ron Rivera, and, he's in charge of player personnel, right? And I know a lot of people are down on Ron as a player personnel guy. I don't think that that's fair. I think what we're seeing this season with Forrest, with Benjamin St-Juste, with the continued good work of Cameron Curl, with a guy like John Ridgeway doing well, with Jamin Davis being better in year 2 as compared to year 1. This coaching staff is developing players, and specific to guys like Curl and Forrest and Benjamin St-Juste and others, there is a player personnel acumen in terms of finding guys day 2s, day 3s of NFL drafts, waiver wire claims, as was the case with John Ridgeway. Casey Toohill was a waiver wire claim in December 2020. James Smith-Williams, 7th round pick in 2020. The team has gotten good production out of him. So I think with the player personnel side of things, it's encouraging to see this because this is what good teams do. Good teams find diamonds in the rough. Good teams find good players / develop good players from I guess now Fridays and Saturdays of NFL drafts. I was thinking back in the day, but yeah, Fridays and Saturdays of NFL drafts and waiver wire claims and things of that nature. And so I love that part of this, that it's not just a bunch of first round picks like with the defensive line. In the secondary, especially, you're talking about a lot of guys acquired on the cheap who are playing at high levels. And that speaks well to those players, but that also speaks well to Ron and his staff.
They were a 1-point favorite 2 weeks ago. They are a 4.5 point favorite this go round. What do you see? What is Vegas? What have they seen in just 2 weeks? That is a big shift, as you know, in a point spread.
It is. I think Vegas values rest. I think people overlook rest. I think rest matters a lot. Like, I think the fact that the Commanders are going to have this short week and then the cross country flight to play a really good team in San Francisco, that's going to be brutal. That is not going to be an easy game at all. But the fact that the Commanders are coming off a bye week and the Giants are coming off having played, and the Commanders are having not just the bye week, but also this extra week to prepare and to think about things. Really, it's 2 weeks, right? Because you just played the Giants in the previous game. I think that's what Vegas is looking at. To say nothing of, yeah, I mean, the Commanders have been one of the best teams in the NFL for close to 2 months now. So I'm like, that's a factor too. But, this extra week, this bye week, you never know about whether the timing of a bye week is going to prove to be good or not. You think about, like, okay, the St. Juice injury, Montez Sweat and James Smith-Williams coming off concussions, Samuel Cosme coming off his ankle injury, Antonio Gibson's banged up, Brian Robinson Jr.'s banged up. The bye week came at a good time. And if you're going to have all of these guys for Sunday night, man, that puts you in a good spot. I mean, St. Juice being back is huge. If he's back for Sunday night, that is massive, man. So I think Vegas is looking at all of that. It's tough because our team, for the most part, doesn't win games by more than one score, right? It's just not what our team does.
Yeah.
But I do like the Commanders to win. I like them 23-17, so I would take the Commanders and lay the 4.5. I do think the Giants are going to play pretty well. The Giants have not been playing well lately. I don't think they're as bad as we saw against the Eagles, and I think the Giants are going to be motivated. But the Commanders, to me, are the better team. And so if they just play like it, which they should, especially coming off the bye, then this should be a win.
What is the key to get that win?
I think the number one key is the pass protection needs to be better than what it was in that game number one.
Schweitzer at the middle makes me nervous, right? Because they are good interior.
They are. I mean, I like them better at center than Nick Martin, but
Sure.
I don't know how much that says. But look, Taylor Heineke, whatever you want to say about his performance in the tie, and I know a big deal has been made about him missing Logan Thomas on that throw. Taylor also made some huge plays late in the game, but the Giants finished that game with 5 sacks and 10 quarterback hits. The Giants' pass rush is one of the best pass rushes in the NFL. But the thing about the Giants is they generate pressure by blitzing a ton. Number one blitz team in the NFL per Sport Radar. The Commanders are the opposite. The Commanders generate pressure, but they don't blitz nearly as much, right? The Commanders have the luxury of generating pressure with 4. So how do you handle the Giants blitzing? And can you take advantage of that, right? Because if the team is blitzing, then that means there should be opportunity beyond the blitz. So, Taylor's got to be on. The pass protection needs to be better. I trust the Commanders' defense. I do. I mean, I know Daniel Jones ran for some yardage in the first game, but beyond that, I mean, the Commanders did a good job in that game. Did a good job against Saquon Barkley. Did a good job again on third downs. Generated the big takeaway early in the game. Jones's yards per pass attempt in that first game was not good. So I trust the Commanders' defense. The offense just needs to be good enough. The offense just needs to not screw it up, man. Like, that's basically what the idea is. And I think the offense is capable of that. I really do.
They've been great. I'll say this as we wrap up here. They have been great between the 20s.
Yeah.
They have got to start scoring touchdowns. They cannot live off of 3, Joey Sly being the NFC special teams player of the month. You know what I mean? They've got to get in the end zone.
Yeah, and I think with the defense, I mean, you don't need 35 to win on Sunday night. If the offense can produce 3 touchdowns, okay, you produce 3 touchdowns, you get a couple of Joey Sly field goals, you give me 24, 27 points, that should be good enough to win, okay? That really should be good enough. So we're not asking for all-time excellence. We're just asking for confidence. And the offense too often this season has performed subpar. Just need the offense to be decent. That's all. And I think there is enough weaponry for this offense to be more than decent. And I think Taylor Heineke, look, I know everyone has the nits to pick, but when he's on, he can be really good. And I don't think that it's unreasonable to think that he could be on Sunday night. Okay. Like he's capable of getting hot. We saw that last season. We've seen that at times this season. I think we can see that. It's funny with him. He's had late game heroics, but he has yet to have a truly great game start to finish. He has yet to have like what you would call a big game. If you remember last season, he did have some big games. That first game against the Giants, big game. The win at Atlanta, big game. During the 4-game winning streak, especially the game against Carolina, he was really good in that game. He's had games this season in which he's been good in pockets, but like in terms of an overall game where you say, man, Taylor Heineke was really good in that game. I don't know that we've had that necessarily yet.
He's quit running the ball too, right? I mean,
he has, which I want to see more of. I don't
Right.
get why we're not seeing more of that. But, I think as funny as it may sound, I think we're kind of due for Taylor to have a big game. And I think he's capable of that. And I hope like heck that we see that on Sunday night.
I do too. He is Al Galdi. The Al Galdi podcast is available Mondays through Fridays, early too, right? Like 5 in the morning. Listen to it with you while you drink your coffee.
That's right. Early in the morning, 5 a.m. hour, early 6 a.m. hour, somewhere in there. Sunday night's going to be tough because the game's not ending till 11:30, 12 probably. But that's okay. Yeah, new show every weekday. Talk a lot of Commanders, and there's a lot to talk about and a lot to feel good about right now. So it's been fun.
Absolutely. And one of the things I love most about yours is all the sound that you add. I know you do all that by yourself. It must take a while to get all that edited because I do. I dig it. It's easy to read off like the Ron quotes, but to cut the audio and get it in there is one of my favorite things that you do.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think it's important to hear what is said. I think when you read a quote, there's only so much you can get out of that. I think when you hear like the inflection in a person's voice and the context of what he said and when he said what he said, how he said what he said, I do think that stuff matters. So I appreciate that.
Al, always appreciate these, man. I'm always generous with your time, and I appreciate it. Merry Christmas, bud.
Thank you. Same to you, and I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely.